The greatest ceremony in 1,000 years was about to fall apart, and nobody knew why Emperor Zar'khan's 3 cubs were missing. The imperial throne room sparkled like a galaxy made of crystal. 40 billion beings across the universe were watching the Millennial Coronation live. This only happened once every 1,000 years, when the twin moons aligned and the ancient dragons renewed their vows to protect the galaxy. Emperor Zar'khan stood 15 feet tall, covered in golden scales that shimmered like sunset. His wings spread wide as he approached the stellar throne. Everything was perfect, except for one small problem. Where are my heirs? The Emperor's voice cracked across the broadcast. The Crystal Dais, where his 3 cubs should be sitting, was completely empty. The cushions were cold. The ceremonial toys untouched. The Emperor's tail went rigid. That tail was carrying the crown jewels, passed down for 10,000 years. Now it looked more like a weapon ready to strike. Shirare? Kex? Pava? He called his cubs names, his golden eyes scanning the crowd of 1,000 dignitaries. Nothing. Captain Thexiar of the Royal Guard checked his scanner and whispered urgently to the Emperor. Whatever he said made the Emperor's scales shift from gold to deep purple, the color of barely controlled rage. Seal the throne room, the Emperor commanded. Nobody leaves until my heirs are found. The massive doors slammed shut with a boom that shook the crystal walls. Force fields shimmered to life over every window. The greatest ceremony in galactic history had just become a prison. Before we continue, YouTube shows me that 93% of you haven't subscribed yet. Subscribing is free, it really supports our community, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Also, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. In the diplomatic section, Ambassador James Harrison stood perfectly still. Too still. Like someone trying very hard not to move at all. His ceremonial coat, required dress for all Earth representatives, looked oddly bulky. It was supposed to be form-fitting, but today it looked like he'd stuffed 3 pillows inside it. A tiny sneeze came from his direction. Harrison immediately coughed to cover it, sweat beading on his forehead despite the throne room being freezing cold. The Felinian ambassador's cat-like ears twitched. Did you hear? Solar allergies, Harrison said quickly. Very common on Earth. Very normal. His coat moved. Not the way coats normally move. It rippled like something inside was climbing. Harrison winced and shifted his weight, trying to look casual while something inside his coat seemed to be poking his ribs. Check everywhere. Captain Thexiar ordered his guards. Under every ceremonial robe, behind every pillar, in every shadow. The guards spread out like water, searching nobles, checking underneath floating platforms, scanning with devices that could detect a heartbeat through solid stone. They reached the diplomatic section. Ambassadors have immunity from physical search, Captain Thexiar said reluctantly. Ancient treaty law. Then search visually, the Emperor growled, his voice making the crystals hum. All eyes turned to the diplomatic line. The crystalline ambassador chimed nervously. The aquatic delegate's colors rippled with stress. And Harrison? Harrison looked like someone had asked him to solve advanced mathematics while juggling flaming swords. James' friend, a tiny voice whispered from inside his coat. How much longer? Harrison didn't move his lips but whispered back through his teeth. Shoo, please, just a little longer. Something shifted inside his coat. Multiple somethings. Moving up his chest, around his back, one definitely playing with his metals. The coat started smoking. Not metaphorically. Actual smoke wisped from Harrison's collar. Ambassador Harrison, the Emperor's massive head turned toward him. You appear to be on fire? Earth incense. Harrison said quickly. Very traditional. For ceremonies. We always smoke. I mean burn incense. While standing. It's totally normal. A tiny hiccup came from his midsection. Then a small burst of flame shot out of his collar. Harrison's metal started melting. Perhaps you need water? The aquatic ambassador offered, holding out a ceremonial water orb. Yes. Thank you. Harrison grabbed it, pretended to drink, then somehow poured it down inside his coat. The hiccuping stopped. But then disaster. Captain Thexiar approached with his scanner. Ambassador, I apologize, but we need to do a thermal scan. It won't touch you, just read heat signatures. Harrison's face went pale. Is that really necessary? The Emperor's heirs are missing. Everything is necessary. The captain raised his scanner. That's when a tiny scaled tail dropped out from beneath Harrison's coat. Just for a second. A little golden tail with a black tuft at the end, exactly like the royal cubs. Harrison quickly stepped on his own coat, yanking the tail back up. But it was too late. Ambassador Harrison, The Emperor's voice was deadly quiet. Would you care to explain why a tail just appeared from your coat? The entire throne room held its breath. Harrison opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a tiny golden head popped out of his collar. Hi, grandfather. Princess Pava, the smallest of the royal cubs, waved cheerfully. James' friend's coat is cozy. The throne room erupted in chaos. Two more heads popped out, Prince Kex from Harrison's left armpit and Princess Shurare from somewhere near his belt. We were scared. Shurare announced to the shocked crowd. The ceremony is boring. Kex added helpfully. James' friend has chocolate. Pava held up a half-eaten earth candy bar as evidence. Harrison dropped to his knees, 3 dragon cubs still attached to various parts of his coat like scaly ornaments. Your Majesty, I take full responsibility. You hid my heirs in your coat during the Millennial Coronation. The Emperor's voice was so controlled it was terrifying. They were scared, Harrison said simply. I couldn't let children be scared. The cubs tumbled out of his coat properly now, revealing the full extent of the situation. They were covered in chocolate smears, candy wrappers stuck to their scales, and Pava was wearing Harrison's backup tie as a cape. 1 hour ago they came to me, Harrison explained quickly. They were crying. The ceremony was too big, too loud, too many minds. Minds? The Emperor interrupted. Shurare nodded enthusiastically. Grandfather, everyone's thoughts are so loud. Except James' friend. His mind is quiet. Like clouds. Soft clouds that smell like chocolate. The Emperor turned to his court telepath. Silas, scan the human's mind. The 4-eyed telepath approached Harrison nervously. After a moment, his eyes widened. Extraordinary. His thoughts are, how do I explain? It's like mental white noise. Soothing. Like ocean waves or rain. No sharp edges, no loud intentions. That's why we like humans. Kex piped up. Other grown-ups have shouty thoughts. Humans have whisper thoughts. The royal advisors were scandalized. This is a breach of 10,000 years of protocol. The cubs must sit on the Crystal Dais. The cubs hissed, actually hissed, at the advisors and formed a protective circle around Harrison. No one hurts James' friend. Pava breathed a tiny puff of fire for emphasis. The Emperor watched his heirs, who had never shown such fierce loyalty to anyone, not even their tutors or guards. His massive form approached Harrison, who was still on his knees, expecting execution or banishment. Instead, the Emperor did something that hadn't happened in 10,000 years of royal history. He laughed. Deep, rumbling laughter that made the crystals sing. You hid the future of the Draconic Empire in your coat because they were scared. The Emperor's golden eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. This is the most human thing I've ever witnessed. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, don't be. Maya chose you. They've never chosen anyone before. The Emperor's tail swished thoughtfully. Tell me, Ambassador, do you have children? Harrison's face changed, a flash of old pain. I had a daughter. She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. The throne room went silent. So when you saw scared children, I couldn't ignore them. Any children. Even if they're dragons. Even if it ruins my career. Children shouldn't be scared. The Emperor turned to address the 40 billion beings watching across the galaxy. The ceremony will continue, he announced. But my heirs will remain where they feel safe, with Ambassador Harrison. Gasps echoed through the throne room. Furthermore, the Emperor continued, we will study this phenomenon. Why do our telepathic young find peace with humans? Ambassador Harrison is hereby appointed Royal Comfort Advisor. The cubs cheered and tackle-hugged Harrison, nearly knocking him over. The ceremony continued, but it was unlike any before it. The royal cubs sat with Harrison in the diplomatic section, coloring in books he'd pulled from his pockets. He always carried entertainment for diplomatic children. When they got restless, he taught them thumb wrestling. When the speeches got too long, he let them nap against his shoulders. The galaxy watched in amazement as the most formal ceremony in history became something else. Something warmer, more real. Other young beings in attendance started gravitating toward Harrison too. Soon he had 7 different species children around him, all peaceful, all content. What are you doing to them? The Emperor asked during a break. Nothing special, Harrison said, bouncing a small Felinian kitten on his knee while Pava braided his hair. Just being present. Being safe. 1 month later the palace had changed. Harrison now split his time between the embassy and what was officially called the Royal Comfort Division, but which everyone called Uncle James's room. The cubs had their own corner with Earth toys mixed with draconic learning tablets. They were teaching other royal children across the galaxy how to play hide-and-seek via video calls. James' friend, Shure called out. The Vorthan princes want to know about tag. Tell them it's like hunting but nobody gets eaten, Harrison suggested. The Emperor visited daily now. At first it was to check on his heirs. Then it was to understand human methods. Now, Harrison, do you have a moment? The Emperor looked almost embarrassed. Of course, Your Majesty. I've been having trouble sleeping. The mental noise of ruling 40 billion souls is overwhelming. I wondered if you might have suggestions. Harrison smiled and pulled out a book. Have you ever heard of bedtime stories? That evening, for the first time in recorded history, the Emperor of the Draconic Empire sat on cushions while a human read The Hobbit out loud. The cubs were curled up between them, already half asleep. Why doesn't Smog just eat everyone and take their gold? The Emperor asked. That's not the point of the story, Harrison explained patiently. Then what is? Sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest difference. The Emperor looked at Harrison, then at his cubs, who were now completely asleep, drooling slightly on Harrison's coat. Like a human hiding cubs in his coat? Something like that. 3 months later, the palace celebrated the anniversary of what was officially called the coat incident. A statue was unveiled in the royal garden, Harrison's bulky coat with 3 small dragons peeking out. The inscription read, "Comfort transcends protocol." The cubs, now wearing tiny diplomatic badges Harrison had made for them, gave a presentation to the Galactic Council. Humans are special, Shure explained to the assembled representatives. Their minds don't hurt. They have pockets full of snacks, Kex added, clearly considering this equally important. They give the best hugs, Pava demonstrated by hugging Harrison's leg. The council voted unanimously to implement the Human Comfort Protocol across all diplomatic stations. Within weeks, reports came in, anxiety in young beings dropped by 60%, learning improved by 40%, and interspecies friendships increased by 200%. But the real test came during the anniversary celebration. The Vorthan and Kalari ambassadors were about to declare war over trade routes. Traditional mediation had failed. They were shouting, their translators barely keeping up with the insults. The cubs tugged on Harrison's coat. James' father, they'd started calling him that. They need a nap. Harrison looked at the furious ambassadors, then at the cubs, then made a decision that would go down in diplomatic history. The Royal Comfort Division proposes a 2-hour mandatory rest period. This is absurd, the Vorthan ambassador roared. You can't just, the Kalari delegate started. But Harrison was already dimming the lights, playing ocean sounds from Earth, and somehow producing weighted blankets from his mysteriously deep pockets. When did you last sleep? He asked both ambassadors. They looked at each other. Neither could remember. 2 hours later, they woke up refreshed, slightly embarrassed to find themselves cuddling teddy bears the cubs had provided, and solved their dispute in 15 minutes. How? The galaxy asked. Tired beings make bad decisions, Harrison explained simply. Rested beings remember they don't actually want to fight. That evening, in Harrison's expanded quarters, the Emperor had insisted he needed more room for all the children who visited. A small family moment unfolded. The cubs were officially his wards now. The adoption papers, written in both Earth languages and Draconic script, hung framed on the wall. The Emperor arrived for their weekly story time, bringing Draconic tea that Harrison pretended to enjoy. James' father, Pava said, looking up from where she was drawing, were you scared when you hit us? Terrified, Harrison admitted. But you did it anyway? That's what love does. It does the right thing even when it's scary. The Emperor watched this human who'd lost his own child, teaching his heirs about courage and love. Harrison, I've received interesting news from Earth. Oh. Your daughter's memorial fund, the one that helps sick children, they've sent a message. Harrison's eyes immediately filled with tears. He'd started the fund after Emma died, but hadn't heard much about it since leaving Earth. The Emperor activated a hologram. It showed hundreds of human comfort specialists graduating from a new academy, all inspired by Harrison's story. The fund had paid for their training. They were going out across the galaxy to help children of all species. Emma would have loved this, Harrison whispered. She would have loved them, the Emperor corrected, gesturing to the cubs who had abandoned their activities to group hug Harrison. Can we visit Emma's star? Shure asked. Harrison had told them about the Earth tradition of naming stars after loved ones who'd passed. Of course. We'll bring her flowers, Kex decided. Dragons don't bring flowers, the Emperor said automatically. We're not just dragons, Pava announced proudly. We're dragon-human family. We do both things. 1 year later, the Galactic Comfort Academy's first graduation took place. Harrison stood at the podium, looking out at a sea of faces, humans and aliens all trained in the art of comfort. A year ago, I broke the biggest protocol in royal history, he began. I hid 3 scared cubs in my coat during the most important ceremony in a millennium. I thought my career was over. The crowd laughed. Instead, those 3 cubs taught the galaxy something vital. Comfort isn't weakness. Quiet minds aren't empty minds. And sometimes the best solution to the biggest problems is a nap and a teddy bear. The cubs, now a bit bigger but still small enough to fit in his coat, they checked regularly, demonstrated their latest innovation, diplomatic blanket forts, designed to create safe spaces during tense negotiations. Emperor Zar'khan took the stage. The next millennial coronation is in 1,000 years. But we won't wait that long to implement change. From now on, every royal ceremony will include comfort protocols. Soft spaces for overwhelmed young ones. Quiet rooms for those who need mental rest. And humans, wonderful, mentally quiet humans, to help everyone remember that power without kindness is just bullying with a crown. The academy erupted in applause. Later, in Harrison's office, he sat looking at the wall of photos. Cubs growing up. Thousands of children he'd helped. His daughter Emma's picture in the center, surrounded by drawings the cubs had made of their Earth sister. James' father? Shure poked her head in. Are you sad? No, little one. Just remembering. Remembering Emma? Remembering the day 3 scared cubs chose my coat over crystal thrones. Best choice ever, Keck said, joining them. Coziest choice, Pava added, somehow already in Harrison's lap despite him not seeing her arrive. You know what Emma would say if she could see this? Harrison asked. What? She'd say, Dad, your coat's not big enough for all of them. The cubs laughed, their joy mixing with the memory of a little girl who'd never gotten to meet them but whose legacy of love had changed the galaxy. That night, as they did every night, the cubs tried to fit in Harrison's coat for old time's sake. They were getting too big, but they made it work, all 3 heads poking out at odd angles. Tell us again, Pava requested sleepily, about the day you saved us. You mean the day you saved me, Harrison corrected, remembering how empty his life had been before 3 scared dragons chose him. The Emperor, arriving for evening tea, found them like that. 1 human, 3 dragons, 1 coat, and enough love to transform a galaxy. The coat that held 3 cubs, he said softly, held the future of 40 billion souls. It was just a coat, Harrison said. No, the Emperor corrected. It was a promise. A promise that says you're scared? Come here. You're overwhelmed? Take a break. You need comfort? That's not weak, that's wisdom. In the Imperial Archives, the Millennial Coronation would be remembered not for its grandeur or tradition, but as the day 3 scared cubs chose a human's coat over crystal thrones, and in doing so taught 40 billion souls that sometimes the greatest strength is being soft enough for frightened children to hide against. The revolution hadn't started with weapons or politics or grand speeches. It started with a human who couldn't ignore scared children, a coat with surprisingly deep pockets, and the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needed more hugs and naps and quiet minds. And chocolate. Definitely chocolate. James' father? Pava mumbled, half asleep. Yes. Your coat still smells like safety. Good, Harrison whispered, holding his dragon children closer. It always will.